Hi there. I hope you're doing well. I hope your day is fine, and I hope that life is taking you well. My name is Anthony, and this is my YouTube channel where we discuss the issues that are facing the youth in our country. And I do hope that this video will resonate with you today. So, thank you for taking your time to tune in, and let's start. So, today I'd like to talk about a topic that has been a point of contention within this country for quite some time now, and it has to do with the pulpit. Okay, so I am a believer and I will exercise my comments and opinions as guided by the Word of God or the Bible. So, we have seen within the last 5 years or so an interaction of the church and state. There has been a mixing of the church and the state, and the problem with this thing is it has brought some consequences, some unintended consequences to the church. And today I just wanted us to look at this thing critically and see where the mistakes are, and we can try to understand who is making these mistakes and how can we resolve them. So first of all, the church and the state are supposed to be two different entities, distinctively unique and separate in function. So, with the biblical context, political leaders were usually being ushered into office by religious leaders. So, leaders, kings, would go to prophets so that prophets would tell them the mind of God concerning the nation, so that this leader would lead the nation adhering to the will of God and what God wants for that particular nation. So the interaction between the church and the state was that of guidance. Okay, so the leader wants guidance so that he can rule with wisdom and rule the people who are God's people, because it is a delegated authority that God has given this leader to rule or to govern. So the leader would approach the church, okay, or the religious leaders to gain clarity on the mind of God concerning various issues. So in Kenya, we have seen that there has been a very big confusion which has brought about very negative depiction of the church based on some few religious leaders who have not painted the best image of what the church should be like, and I'll break it down. So the religious leaders, especially the Christian fraternity, they came together and they prayed for leadership and they prayed for this government to come into power. So concerning that, I'll not comment because I believe they were guided, okay, to pray for the leader to be in power. That's well and good. But what I have an issue with is when you pray for someone to come into power, they trust you to be their spiritual guide. And the role of spiritual leaders is to give leadership or to give direction when it comes to how the society should be run, so that we can be in line with what God wants for that particular nation. So a religious leader offers spiritual guidance both to the leader of that nation and to the citizenry of that nation. So it's a guidance thing. But what happened in Kenya is when the president took office and there was this interaction with some religious leaders, then they became too cozy and they started interacting and they blurred the lines between state and religion. Okay? So, because of this not so clear demarcation between who is the state and the religious leaders and what are the boundaries, what unites us, like our terms of interaction, what are our terms of interaction? Okay, because primarily in the Bible it makes it clear that religious leaders are supposed to offer spiritual direction and guidance to whoever comes to them. So that's where it ends. But when now you see religious leaders start using their platforms to vouch for a specific candidate, then now you're muddying the waters, because what a responsible religious leader should do is to pray for the leader that you think God is telling you to pray for, then teach your people, okay? Teach your people how to choose ethical, good leaders. Teach your people how they should make decisions when it comes to selecting and electing, okay, leaders who are aligned to the will of God. You don't come, okay, even if God puts it in my heart to pray for a certain leader and I am the head of a congregation, I do not come and tell them to choose a specific person. No. I can tell them to pray for that person, but the choice to choose that person is up to them. It is dependent on their conviction. So, as a responsible, mature, wise, religious leader, I am supposed to teach them what characters to look for, what qualities that a leader should possess. Then I leave it to them to make that decision based on their analysis of the available options. What these spiritual leaders did, they came and brought a candidate who they were praying for to their congregation, and they vouched for the candidate and they pushed the candidate to the people. Okay, so I repeat this, there needs to be a distinction between when God tells you to pray for someone. I have not denied probably God told you to pray for the person, but praying for the person does not mean you go and push that person to your congregation as the option. No, you teach them to discern, because today you will tell them to choose this person. What about tomorrow? And that is the error that they did not see. So now they went ahead and pushed the candidate to the people. Their congregation chose the person. Okay? And now the person goes into power and goes against everything they promised. So now their congregation, or the congregation, is angry at the spiritual leaders. Why? Because you brought this person to us. You told us that God told you he is the one who has been chosen. So you see, there is a lack of wisdom from the spiritual leaders, because when God tells you something, it is your priority to pray for the person. But you don't go and take that person to the people and present that person as a candidate. Teach the people how to choose a good leader. Let them choose. Because now what is happening is the church, not the whole church, part of the spiritual leaders got so cozy with the government. I don't know what agreements they had, because we've been seeing appointments in the church, but I'll not speak on that today. So I don't know what agreements they had, but now the congregation are angry because the leaders that were chosen have turned out to be very different and opposite, going even against the teachings of the Bible. So, because the spiritual leaders were heavily invested in vouching for these people and bringing them even in front of their congregation for support, the congregation is waiting on the leaders to bear the same responsibility of coming to them and explaining to them what exactly is happening in this country. Why is the leadership suddenly killing people? Why are they plundering resources? Why are they not prioritizing our well-being? Why is the country being mismanaged? Because you came very calmly and presented this person to us out of your own will and volition, and you vouched for them. Now, where is the equal responsibility to come to us and explain to us what exactly is happening to the person that you brought before us and vouched for them in front of us? And you see now, this is where I say it's very dangerous when you don't know how to balance between what God has called you to do and a burden that God has given you to pray for in a particular season. Because God can give you a burden to pray for a particular person, maybe to enter into office, but you do not now take your burden and mix it with your primary assignment. That was a burden for a season. You do it, then you detach from it. But now people do not know how to clearly demarcate the boundaries of the assignment that God has given them and a burden for a particular season. So because there was too much excitement, people were not clearly in their right minds. They made certain decisions that were not wise, that did not have wisdom. And now the congregation is demanding for answers for spiritual leaders who do not want to be accountable for the choices they made independently on their own, because they extended the mandate that God had given them. Because if they were told to pray for the person, that's a burden. You do not extend a burden to become an extension of your ministry. No. God called spiritual leaders to offer clarity, to offer guidance. So it's very dangerous when you mix church and state. That is why you see that there is a misuse of the pulpit. Why do I say this? There's this issue of money. I do not have an issue with people donating to church. I give to God, people give to God. You're allowed to give to God. Everyone has their relationship with God, so you give according to how you're convicted. But when now someone makes it intentional to use your pulpit, the one that God gave you for ministry, that pulpit that you're supposed to preach Jesus to the congregation, the pulpit that is supposed to be used to minister God's heart to his people, you allow that pulpit to become a political, stage where people come and express how they feel and they want to declare their political aspirations there, and you do not, or you cannot control. Why? Because you have been compromised. How? Because you have accepted money, and accepting money is not bad. But most spiritual leaders that we have, they have not died to the things of the flesh. Sorry, I'm drifting into spiritual talk, but most of them have not drifted to the things, have not drifted away from the flesh. That is why when someone offers money, they put away all their principles and morals and everything that guides them, and then now they become like people who are salivating, and therefore they compromise their pulpits because of money. They compromise their pulpits because they see money. And that's why you are having people welcoming politicians who are coming to church to misuse the elevated platform that God has given them for ministration of His word. People are using it to fight each other, to talk haphazardly, just because they're giving money. I will not address that because I did not call anyone to ministry. It is between them and their God. I'm just saying we have seen certain things in this country that really make us question the type of spiritual leadership that we're having. We, as young people, are not at all amused by the lack of values that the spiritual leaders in this country are portraying. Not all, but some. We clearly see that there is a problem, that someone can have a gift but their character is wanting. And because we have people with questionable characters, they do not mind blurring the lines between state and religion. They do not mind giving their pulpits away to be used for political showdowns, because there is money on offer. So I don't know about that. I don't know how that will go. But what I know is that there is change that is coming to this country. And we're going to see a change in the way church is run. We're going to see a change in the ministers who will attract people. Because some of these old guards have really compromised the pulpits. And you'll start seeing a shift. Even the young people who are being attracted to churches, they will go and look for Jesus in places that actually maintain values, the biblical values and principles. Because when you are a young person and you're looking at your spiritual leader for guidance and leadership to help you make ethical decisions in life, and you see them losing their minds just because someone has offered money, then that makes you question if this is the right person to shape my character. And what I know is that God has been raising young leaders. There are still young leaders who are being furnished, who have been built with the right character, who have not yet been corrupted. And soon you'll start seeing these leaders rise in the political space. You're going to see them even in the churches, and you're going to see people who will separate between their calling and between the state, such that when you are communicating to the state or to people in leadership, you do so as an assignment for that specific time, and you go back to your pulpit and you separate the work that God has given you and the interest of the state. So there is a clear demarcation between the church and the government. So that is happening very soon. If you have noted, even now, there is a shift. Young people are moving towards specific churches because There are churches that are now portraying ideals that are closer to their hearts. And I know we all go to church to serve God. And I personally, I said I'm a Christian, so I don't want to talk too much on this. But at the end of the day, we need to have spiritual leaders who have characters that represent Christ. Because once these leaders are compromised by people in authority, then it means they are not able to speak up when there are injustices in the country. They are not able to correct the government when their leaders are making mistakes. They are not able to stand up, okay, regardless of whatever will happen, and speak the mind of God clearly to the leaders who are contravening the rule of law, because they have already been compromised. When you receive money and that money it silences you, then you have lost moral authority in the society. And what is a spiritual leader, or how helpful is a spiritual leader who cannot speak up or speak out against injustices? So for me, I'll leave it at that, because we have already seen that. We have seen those who have been compromised, and we have seen that even in the midst of the worst atrocities in this country, they are not able to independently come and, question the government. They are not able to play their roles because they've been compromised. And that's why there's one of the videos that I mentioned. God is dealing with Gen Zs for a specific reason. These ones have not been compromised. These ones have their values intact. There's an older generation that does not prioritize what God is saying, because they first of all look at what they have to lose. So there is a shift that is happening. I will not speak more about this, but you will see it happen. There is a great shift that is happening in this country in all sectors, whereby there is a transition from the older generation to a newer generation, or to the younger generation, because God is choosing to work with these young people, us young people, because of the level of compromise that our elders have. They have been compromised to a level that I know we say everything is possible with God, but God works with seasons and times, and these are the times for change. And change comes with a willingness to change the mindset, of which the old people are not willing to do. So let's see how that goes. So I think I'll end my video at that. I hope that you have learned something, and I hope that this helps you, even as I hope that a spiritual leader gets to see this, and you understand the importance of drawing a clear distinction between your ministry and an assignment that God gives you for a season. Do not mix the two and end up confusing the flock that God has given you to shepherd. Because if you cross the border or the boundary and do something that God has not told you to do, or you extend your capacity, then you do something that you are not really supposed to do, then you have to be ready to bear the consequence of whatever comes out of your added actions. So it is good to just do what you're supposed to do. Draw a clear line between the government and the church, so that you do not taint God's name in pursuit of whatever you're pursuing. So that's it for me. Thank you for listening to me. Like, share, and subscribe this content with anyone who you think will benefit. My name is Anthony. God bless you. God bless Kenya.